first speak to Shamika Ravi, Dr. Shamika Ravi, who is one of the authors, one of the three authors of this report. She's also part of the PMEAC. Dr. Ravi, what are the key takeaways from this study?
Rahul, this is a study we've been doing for the last 8 months or so, and it is a joint exercise with two of my colleagues, Apoorv Mishra and Abraham Jones. Basically, this was a study using a novel new data set called the Religious Characteristics data set of states, which is put together by a group of scholars in the US universities. But this looks at religious demographics transition globally, so across all countries over several long time frames, several decades. So what we do is we were interested in looking at what is happening to minorities across different countries, and so we study 167 countries from 1950, because this was right after the wars and this was the beginning of sort of the golden period of a stable economic growth across the country. So 1950 to 2015. And the main findings we see is, of course, from a relevance of India, that in India, what we have seen is an increase in the share of minority population, and a significant increase of almost 7.82, because it's countering the decline in the majority. And the change that you're seeing in India is similar to what you're seeing in terms of, globally plural liberal democracies of OECD countries, the Western, more richer parts of the world. And quite contrary to what is the case in our neighborhood, where minority populations have actually shrunk alarmingly in the last 65 years.
Right.
Other than that, I think exciting things are, in Africa and some of the degrees of change that Europe is seeing lately.
Well, Dr. Ravi, there's much interest in population replacement theory around the globe. Is this probable in the Indian context? Your study cites the example of other nations where majorities have become minorities in just 65 years.
Well, now ours is relatively modest if you consider a country like France, which has seen close to almost 30% decline in share of majority over this long time frame. There are several countries in Europe which are seeing, but remember the forces underplay, the different, we have, of course, we are not talking about any specific driving factor, because this is migration, this is natural, it's a rate of fertility rates, and this is conversion, right? And we are basically saying that the final share of minority in the population is like a final outcome of all these different policies and reality across countries combined. And so I think different countries have had different, in fact, we also look at a handful, around 10 countries, which have had minimal growth in last 65 years. So they've had very stable populations, like Thailand, if you look at Iran, Turkey, Afghanistan. And also these are extreme cases, but there are countries which have seen varied degrees of change. But India is like, India is becoming more heterogeneous from that perspective. We are seeing a decline in the Hindu population, which is around 7.82, and a commensurate increase in not just minorities combined, but different elements of that. So we are seeing a significant increase in the Muslim population. We're seeing a significant increase in the Christian population, Buddhist population, and the Sikh population. In fact, the only religions whose shares have declined in 65 years are Parsis and Sikhs. But minority as a whole is actually growing in India, much unlike the neighborhood.
So let me ask you, is the impact of migration, especially illegal migration, conversion, potentially underreported, which could lead to a greater skew going ahead?
We will have to do a much more thorough analysis. For instance, in the African case, 24 countries had animism as the majority religion in 1950. And in the 65 years of the study period, none of those countries have animism as a major religion. And obviously, the forces at play there is conversion. Almost all of them have converted to either Islam or Christianity. Now, you have to study country by country. And in the Indian case, obviously, it's a combination of declining fertility And there has been differential, of course, you're seeing convergence lately, but fertility rates have been significantly different across different groups.
Yes.
We do have cases of migration, but we have not measured it because also, remember, some of these things have to be studied much more at a state level. The whole country does not see uniform changes. You're seeing pockets. And similarly, conversion. We will have to study more localized to see where is it that you are having drastic changes. And the reason I say drastic is because if you only leave it to natural sort of demographic changes based on just the fertility rate or birth rate, you are unlikely to see such big differences. So obviously there is element of migration and element of conversion which is at play here, but it's an empirical study and we will need far better data, far more granular data, and I'm not sure we have that in the public domain.
Okay, so tell our viewers what's new about the study apart from establishing that Muslim populations are growing at a faster pace in South Asia and that the Hindu population is shrinking alarmingly in both Nepal and India.
Well, it's a global study. It is showing that India is, it's a liberal plural democracy. It's not just Muslims. It's all minority groups, barring two, which are where you are seeing their share grow. And so this really flies in the face of a lot of, attempt to sort of term India as being majoritarian, or being particularly inhospitable to minority populations, because that is not true. I mean, clearly the data is telling you that minority populations across these different groups is not just changing, in small ways, but these are big changes that is happening in the country. So India is clearly conducive to, it's extremely hospitable, but not just, it's progressive. And the other thing to note, Rahul, is that not every country in the world has policies or even legally defines minorities. So countries like China, there is no legal definition of what construes minority. So clearly there are no policies which are targeting specific groups. And that is where I think India is again an exception. And that's why we are a true sort of liberal and plural democracy, because not only do we define minority, but we have a lot of policies. We have a Ministry of Minority Affairs. We have lots of policies, not just at the central federal level, but also at the regional and the state levels, which cater to minority populations. So in that sense, this whole narrative is clearly, it's all manufactured. And the reality in India is very, very different. We are more like Western liberal democracies.
Okay, so many say that the conclusions from the study will create fresh mistrust between Hindus and Muslims in India. What's your response? A lot of opposition parties are saying this.
Oh, that's absolutely untrue. That, it's the politics season. It is election season. You're going to hear all kinds of noise. The way to look at a study like this, frankly, the analogy I want to use is in the midst of the pandemic. When you put out daily statistics on the nature of the infection, one reaction would be, why are you putting out these statistics? Because when you tell us that things are getting better, people become relaxed and they're not going to be careful. At the same time, you would also hear people say, why are you putting out these statistics? It makes people fearful. And they'll be excessively alarmed. The point is, how can not knowing be better than either of these? And so I think the idea of this paper is to document scientifically, as objectively as possible in terms of available data, what is happening on the ground in India. And I think another fact one has to accept is that this study will not come as a surprise to any Indian data scientist, economist, scholar of demography, because these are not shocking numbers to them. We have always anecdotally known this. I think it's the context, the global context. It is the regional context within which, when you put the numbers together, it looks drastic. Okay. But there is nothing terribly surprising or new if you look at these trends.
So if there's nothing new, why release this data at all, according to you, Dr. Ravi? And many people are questioning the timing of the study, saying that it's being timed to the elections to help in polarizing the election, etc.
Again, Rahul, how can not knowing be better? I have also been asked, why didn't you put out the study 2 months back? I mean, why, so again, it's exactly the same as saying, let's not know. I think not knowing is never a good option, particularly for, scientific inquiry. The fact is that when we find data sets, as researchers, as scholars in the community, when we find something exciting, interesting, we are motivated to dig and do a rigorous analysis, an econometric analysis, and put it out in the public domain when the paper is ready. It's a working paper. We welcome, absolutely welcome any feedback on the findings themselves. But if we are going to discuss motivations and intent, then I'm sorry, that we'll leave that to the political space.
Well, Dr. Ravi, thank you very much for giving us an insight into this study, beyond, of course, the numbers, putting it into context. Thank you very much.